This wasn't a quiet diplomatic disagreement. This wasn't a minor policy dispute handled behind closed doors. This was a public humiliation, and it came straight from the Oval Office.
Breaking tonight, the government is set to defy President Trump by pressing ahead with the giveaway of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. That's despite, by the way, President Trump's attack on the deal last night, warning Sir Keir Starmer he was making a big mistake and Britain should stand up to wokeism.
In a moment that many are calling unprecedented in modern Anglo-American relations, Donald Trump openly questioned Britain's relevance, and by extension, the authority of Keir Starmer, not in whispers, not through back channels, but in full view of the world.
They are surprised that Keir Starmer, to this point, has managed to get on with Donald Trump more than they expected. When it comes to the Labour government as a whole, behind the scenes, they're not particularly impressed. We know they disagree with them on multiple issues. And I also think one of the reasons that Donald Trump liked Keir Starmer was the sense he's a winner, so he respected his large majority. So you speak to figures in the administration behind the scenes, and they are very confused with the fact this Labour government is so unpopular.
For decades, the special relationship has been treated almost as sacred doctrine in British foreign policy, in intelligence sharing, military coordination, trade alignment, a bond forged through war and reinforced through NATO. Now, that bond looks strained to breaking point. According to sources in Washington, the White House has grown increasingly frustrated with Downing Street.
The most unpopular Prime Minister since records began. And he thinks that he can play a bit of musical chairs at number 10 and that's going to fix anything. Of course, he's on record as saying that I'm somebody that will never throw colleagues under the bus. Jonathan Powell was offered Chief of Staff because he is an experienced administrator and was, of course, there for the Blair years as well, which was a bit like a golden era for Labour by comparison to now.
Yeah.
So he's got a problem. And the issue is that he needs these strong lieutenants around him because he doesn't have any ideas and he doesn't have a vision or a philosophy. So he looks very lonely and very exposed.
Officials suggest that what they see is not cooperation, but obstruction, not partnership, but distance. And then came the diplomatic signal that stunned Westminster. While leaders from Hungary, Argentina and Israel were warmly welcomed in Washington, Britain was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Trump hosted Nigel Farage at Mar-a-Lago, Starmer's fiercest domestic critic, praising him as someone who understands the British people. That was not accidental, that was deliberate. By bypassing the sitting Prime Minister and engaging directly with an opposition figure, Washington sent a message louder than any press statement ever could. You are no longer indispensable. For months, Labour voices insisted they could manage a Trump presidency. That professional diplomacy would smooth ideological differences. But this moment suggests something far more serious. The White House is no longer treating London as a priority. And when Britain's closest ally begins to look elsewhere for partnership, that isn't just awkward, it's dangerous. Because geopolitics doesn't wait for hurt feelings to heal, it moves fast. And the consequences are already beginning to surface. But the diplomatic snub was only the beginning. Because what followed hit not just Westminster, but British businesses, workers and families. This crisis didn't stay in the realm of diplomatic theatre, it moved into trade, into markets, into jobs, and it did so fast. Within days of the public rift, Donald Trump signed an executive order imposing a 20% universal baseline tariff on foreign goods entering the United States, and that includes the United Kingdom, not China, not the EU, not a specific rival, Britain. For months, some dismissed Trump's tariff threats as campaign rhetoric, negotiation tactics, political theatre. But this is no longer rhetoric, it is policy. And the economic consequences are beginning to ripple through the UK economy. The Office for Budget Responsibility has reportedly warned that under this tariff regime, the UK economy could contract by as much as £22 billion in the next financial year. That is not a rounding error, that is a shock. Manufacturing regions, already fragile after years of sluggish growth, are now bracing for impact. Take the automotive sector. Brands such as Jaguar Land Rover and Mini rely heavily on access to the American market. A 20% tariff makes British vehicles instantly less competitive compared to US-produced alternatives. Executives are already forecasting double-digit drops in exports. And when exports fall, factories slow, shifts are cut, jobs disappear. But it doesn't stop there. The pharmaceutical sector, one of Britain's most high-value industries, is reportedly reassessing its footprint. If exporting to the US becomes more expensive, relocating research and production across the Atlantic becomes more attractive. That doesn't just mean lost profits. It means lost innovation, lost investment, lost skilled employment. In rural Britain, farmers are feeling the pressure too. Premium exports like whiskey, cheese and beef are now struggling to compete in a more expensive US market. For many small producers, margins were already tight. This could be the tipping point. And here's where the political danger deepens for Keir Starmer. Figures close to Washington claim this damage was avoidable. According to US insiders, Trump had reportedly set a condition for reopening trade discussions: the removal of Foreign Secretary David Lammy, who has previously criticised him publicly. Starmer refused. Standing by his Foreign Secretary may play well domestically as loyalty and principle, but critics argue British workers are now paying the price for political pride. Whether that claim is fair or not almost becomes secondary, because perception drives markets, and markets are reacting. The pound has come under renewed pressure, business confidence is wobbling, investment decisions are being delayed, and when uncertainty lingers, it compounds. But trade is only one front in this growing standoff, because the dispute is now bleeding into foreign policy, defence and intelligence cooperation, and that is where the stakes become even higher. If tariffs threaten Britain's economy, the next development could threaten its security. If the trade war was damaging, the security implications could be seismic, because this dispute between Donald Trump and Keir Starmer is no longer confined to tariffs and diplomatic dinners. It is creeping into intelligence, into defence, into the foundations of Britain's national security. Behind closed doors, alarm bells are reportedly ringing over the future of cooperation within the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, the network binding the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. For decades, that intelligence sharing has been near sacred. It has helped thwart terror plots, track hostile states, protect British lives. Even the suggestion that Britain's access to certain sensitive streams could be reviewed has sent shockwaves through defence circles, because alliances are built on trust, and trust, once questioned, is difficult to restore. The controversy surrounding the Chagos Islands and the future of Diego Garcia has only intensified tensions. US officials have privately warned that any decisions that appear to weaken strategic guarantees around the base could undermine confidence at a critical moment. In a world of rising global threats, ambiguity is not comforting. And then there is the broader geopolitical clash. Trump has signalled interest in accelerating peace negotiations in Eastern Europe and scaling back prolonged military commitments. Starmer, by contrast, has aligned closely with European partners advocating sustained involvement and deterrence. Two different visions, two different approaches, one increasingly strained alliance. According to reports from a recent NATO summit, Trump allegedly accused the British delegation of pursuing policies that prolong conflict. The allegation sparked outrage in Westminster, but outrage does not repair alliances, and politics is now catching up at home. Within Parliament, calls for urgent clarification are growing louder. MPs are demanding transparency about the state of relations with Washington and the real economic and security consequences facing Britain. Opposition parties sense vulnerability, and unrest within Labour's own ranks is quietly simmering. Because here is the brutal political reality. If jobs are lost, if exports shrink, if the pound weakens, if intelligence cooperation cools, voters will not analyse diplomatic nuance. They will ask one simple question: who is responsible? The Prime Minister now faces two stark paths: attempt to repair relations, potentially through concessions that could be politically costly, or hold firm, risking deeper economic pain, prolonged diplomatic isolation, and growing pressure at home. Neither option is easy. Both carry risk. But time is not on his side. Markets are watching, investors are watching, allies are watching, and perhaps most importantly, the British public is watching. This is no longer a routine diplomatic spat. It is a crossroads moment, a test of leadership, a test of strategy, a test of whether Britain can maintain its global standing in an increasingly transactional world. The decisions made in the coming weeks could shape Britain's economic and security position for years, perhaps decades, to come, and once a narrative of decline sets in, reversing it becomes far harder than preventing it. If you believe Britain must urgently repair the special relationship, or if you think standing firm is the right move, let me know in the comments. If you found this breakdown valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Britain Daily for more deep dives into the political stories shaping our country. Thanks for watching. We examine the humiliation factor, the optics of Washington hosting other world leaders while Downing Street appeared frozen out, and the decision to engage directly with Nigel Farage. That was more than symbolism. In international politics, access equals influence. If Britain is not in the room, it is not shaping outcomes. But here's the deeper question. Was this a deliberate sidelining of the UK, or a calculated pressure tactic? Trump's style has always been transactional. Public pressure, high stakes, dramatic leverage. The goal is often to force movement, if that's the strategy. Britain is being tested. The question is whether Starmer bends or calls the bluff. A 20% universal baseline tariff is not subtle. It is blunt force economics. But trade wars are rarely permanent. They are leveraged tools. By imposing costs, Washington increases pressure on Downing Street to reconsider positions, whether on trade alignment, foreign policy posture, or key personnel such as David Lammy. The danger for Britain is timing. If economic damage accumulates faster than diplomatic repair, public opinion will turn quickly. Manufacturing regions won't wait for negotiations. Farmers won't wait for theory. Markets won't wait for pride. Political capital drains fast during economic stress. The political clock is ticking domestically. This could become existential. If growth stalls, if the pound weakens, if security doubts grow, opposition figures will not hesitate to frame this as leadership failure. And in politics, once the word crisis attaches itself to a prime minister, it rarely detaches easily. But history also shows something else. Leaders sometimes emerge stronger from early confrontations if they regain control of the narrative. The coming weeks will determine whether this is remembered as a temporary rupture, a calculated negotiation phase, or the moment Britain's global standing visibly slipped. This is bigger than one dinner, bigger than one tariff, bigger than one headline. It is about Britain's role in a rapidly changing world order, one increasingly driven by transaction, leverage, and power politics. The special relationship has survived wars, recessions, and political upheaval, but it has never been automatic. It has always required alignment. The question now is simple. Is this a reset or the beginning of a realignment?